you look, I'm born in Brooklyn, raised in Staten Island. I've been around the block watching New York sports media have people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the one thing you don't want to do is, certainly when you are a star athlete in this town, blow off the media when you're supposed to speak to them, and then you get fined for it. And then, as Kyrie Irving has done with the Brooklyn Nets, and it's kind of like of interest, right? When, say, Kevin Durant's now healthy, when, say, Steve Nash is your coach, when, say, you put out a video when you hook up with the Nets that you grew up in New Jersey, a big, Drazen Petrovic fan or whatever he claimed to be at the time?
Something like that.
He lived through the Calipari years. Is that what basically he was bemoaning or whatever?
Big Kerry Kittle.
That video of him crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, look, and then you put a little bit more chum in the waters by going on Instagram and quoting Malcolm X and saying, "I do not talk to pawns. My attention is worth more. I pray we utilize the quote-unquote find money for the marginalized communities in need, especially seeing where our world is presently. I am here for peace, love, and greatness, so stop distracting me and my team and appreciate the art," which is capitalized, by the way. We move different over here. I honestly don't know what any of that means. And I saw, I follow Bomani Jones on Twitter. I enjoy his work immensely, and I figured let's get him on here because he was quite taken by this as well. Bomani Jones here on the Rich Eisen Show from the worldwide leader in sports, as well as his own podcast. We'll talk about it here as well. Bomani, how are you? Good to have you on the program today.
Good, man. How are you?
I am fine. I'll give you the floor. What do you think's going on here with Kyrie Irving, Bomani?
I don't know. I don't know. Like that's what the real moral of the story is. Like, I saw the thing he put on Instagram today. I just wanted it to make sense. That's all. Like, can this thing make sense? You don't want to talk to the media. I understand that. I do think that media members kind of undersell how annoying it must be to spend all your time with people bombarding you with questions. Because one thing about media that's worth pointing out, if anything ever happens and we wind up becoming the story, we are quick with the no comment until I talk to my boss. Like, we get it. We know why it is that they don't want to talk to us. But it's the Don Draper line, right? That's what the money's for. That's the trade that everybody makes in this game. They kind of have to deal with us because it serves a greater good and purpose. Now, along the way, somebody wants to ask Kyrie Irving if LeBron was a father figure to him. And that's like an absurdly, really stupid question. And I'm sure they get stupid questions every day. You shouldn't have to answer that stupid question, but like everyday stupid questions, this is just what you're going to get. So I get why somebody would be annoyed and bothered by the idea of being forced to talk to us while they are half-dressed. All of that makes perfect sense. And if Kyrie said, "I just really find you guys to be annoying and I don't want to talk to you," I think I could let that ride. The problem is he always tries to, like, hypothesize and take these things to these intellectual places that he doesn't, like, he doesn't have an all-access pass to this intellectualism. Like, there's a security guard that stops him at a turn that's like, "Yo, man, this is a little farther than you are allowed to go." But that does not stop him. And then next thing you know, he is quoting Malcolm X to explain why it is that he just doesn't want to talk to us. No, it doesn't work like that.
I agree. And in New York, that is just only going to serve to churn it up. Why doesn't he want to talk? Is it because LeBron clapped back a little bit at his quote about how he's finally playing with a player who's, going to take the shot at the end or can make the shot at the end, meaning Durant, or Harden wants to come there and Houston's saying we want Kyrie and he did. And that might be true. I mean, is that what's going on here? Why doesn't he want to talk about a...
Hey, I got to tell you this, man. I don't know if I will ever be so gifted in my life as being able to explain why it is that he does any of these things. That's actually part of the problem. Like, if he could clearly explain, or would clearly explain, because maybe he can and simply hasn't, but if he would clearly explain where he's coming from on some of these things, I think he'd have a lot fewer problems on it. But, like, I look at the thing he put on Instagram, and I'm really like, no, man, I do not understand what it is that you were talking about. Now, it's possible that I don't understand what he is talking about because I am just not bright enough to get it. Just throw it out there in the realm of possibility.
I don't know about that.
Could be the case, man. You got to have some humility and self-awareness in this world. The reality is, I think Jesse Jackson once made this point, is that if you were talking to me and I don't understand it, it is probably your fault, like especially if you're in the space of being a professional communicator. he is in a space where if he wants us to understand something, it is his responsibility to put it in ways that we are able to understand. Like, we're not in a place now where we're trying to twist his words. We're legitimately in a place now saying, dog, what are you talking about?
So do we read into this as that it doesn't work out in Brooklyn? You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing, because, you know, we all sit here on shows and have time to talk about things like this and sometimes overparse it. And I always wonder, certainly in the NFL, about the blow-ups, dust-ups that happen when games aren't being played, and wonder how it does manifest itself when games do start to be played. Is this just a way to just fill a Friday before we're actually tipping off, or you think this is one indication that, once again, Kyrie is going to be part of a situation where a welcome is either worn out, or there might be one championship or none at all? What do you think?
Well, I mean, let's be fair. We all walked into this with a measure of skepticism, because it is impossible to walk into what the Nets are putting together here without having some measure of skepticism, right? But I think that all of us who are observing this are doing so from that position. So I do think that it's fair to say that maybe we can make things into something a little bit more than they are, because it confirms the kinds of things that we think are going to happen. The other thing, though, with Kyrie is he really gets on people's nerves, like in a very unique, singular way, right? Like normally when people are on some like Space Cadet type stuff, we find it to be kind of delightful. No one finds his Space Cadet to be fun because it's so serious. Like, he means all of it. So I think part of it is kind of just a personal reaction to that people have to Kyrie Irving and how this goes. But I do think, though, they are running quite a sociological experiment over there in Brooklyn with this team, in large part because I don't know what Kevin Durant is going to look like when he comes back. But I'm going to assume that Kevin Durant is going to be the best player on the team. He has lived a life as a basketball player already of being the best player on the team, but the dominant personality on the team is somebody else, and that person is the one who gets to dribble the ball up the floor. He kind of got tired of that and went somewhere else after a point. I'm surprised he signed up for it now. This is going to be a lot. Like, everything in Brooklyn is going to be a lot, but that ain't our fault. This is like objectively fascinating.
Bomani Jones, ESPN host, commentator, and host of the Right Time with Bomani Jones podcast right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Would you have given Paul George the max 226 if you were Steve Ballmer and had all those Ballmer billions? Would you have done that?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of better players than Paul George. Like, he's probably one of the 10 or 12 best players in the NBA, and that's the kind of money you pay one of the 10 or 12 best players in the NBA. It just so happens right now that he is in our crosshairs for all these jokes for various reasons. But, like, he's basically a 6'9" two guard who can guard 3 or 4 positions, right, and can give you 35 on a given night. Yeah, that's about what that sort of thing costs. My question for them is, do we know that Kawhi Leonard is going to come back there? Like, are we positive that that's something that he's going to do? Because they hitched their wagon to a couple of guys that I don't know if, like, even if they're really good, are they really, like, dependable in the ways that you need them to be? And so far, the answer to that is kind of ambiguous.
So, yeah, I mean, I hope he does, in the same way that I hope Giannis signs a Supermax, because they went ahead and mortgaged the future for Jrue Holiday. Right, and so you got teams making these moves where you're hoping that the next big, most important step is already decided, not hoped for, or trying to be a bouquet of roses placed at their feet from management saying we already made this move, so it's now time for you to make your move. I sure hope so.
Yeah, well, what I think is going to be interesting is I'm wondering if at some point you're going to see a bit more of a movement among players in free agency decisions where you bet on the front office. Because I understand betting on location and betting on what the roster is at a current point in time. But the smart bet is on the front office. Like, when LeBron left Miami and went to Cleveland, he seemed to realize pretty quickly, oh man, I bet on a really shaky front office, right? So Miami's roster had gotten to be something that maybe you could win with, okay. But Pat Riley's a dude that you think one way or another is going to be able to find a way to get it done. Like, if LeBron was making basketball decisions, you bet on the front office. I don't know if the Clippers have a front office that you necessarily want to bet on. And so if you're Kawhi, and none of us know what he does or thinks because he ain't telling us a damn thing. Like, Kyrie don't want to talk to the media. Kawhi Leonard talks to us. It doesn't tell us anything. Maybe you can learn to live like him, because I can't pretend to know what he's going to want when his contract is up.
Bomani, what do you think Pat Riley's first thought was when, I'm sure he didn't see it on Twitter or on his phone. Somebody had to tell him. I'll just throw that out there, that James Harden put Miami on one of his wish lists I want to go to play for. What do you think went through Riley's mind when he heard that?
Oh, immediately trying to figure out what way there is for it to happen, because Pat Riley does not look at the world in the same ways that we do. Like, I see the idea of trading assets away for James Harden and ask, how are you going to build this thing around James Harden? Is the only way to play ball with James Harden having the ball all the time and things that stagnate your offense, or whether that's the guy that you want around. Pat Riley is, I am Pat Riley. This is like, he's David Ruffin, right? Like, I'm David Ruffin and these are the Temptations. That's how Pat Riley sees the Heat. This is his team. And so, yeah, we bring James Harden in here, and he would do what it is that we do, because not even with LeBron James did Pat Riley truly entertain the possibility that he is going to bend to what the player wants, right? They may take your input into account, but he's the guy who's in charge. So if you tell him one of the best 5 players in the NBA is available to be under his charge, he'll try to find a way to, like, if he wants it, he'll find a way to get this done, because I don't think the market is going to be nearly as robust as James Harden would have expected.
Well, certainly not if the Rockets are doing what they should do, which is, okay, we've got 2 years of contractual control remaining. This player does not have a no-trade clause. However, the NBA gives you whatever trade clause you want when a superstar usually says, I don't want to be here. But that said, they should look at Philadelphia and say, well, one of the names better be Embiid or Simmons. I don't want to hear about Tobias Harris. Or, well, Nets, one of the names better be Kyrie. I'm sure you're not going to be talking about Durant. But one of those names better pop up. And if you're Houston, the name is Hero, right? Or Adebayo? I mean, that better be the first name out of Pat Riley's mouth. Otherwise, enjoy playing with John Wall. Shouldn't that be there?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
you
right?
can't give a play. Like, you think, I've talked about this for a while, like some of the superstar trades of back in the day, like Charles Barkley got traded for Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. And after that season, Andrew Lang left Philadelphia and went back to Phoenix, right? You can't get away with making one of those trades anymore. Not after you get all of that for Paul George, for example. Not after the Pelicans got all of that for Anthony Davis. Like, you as a general manager can't go face your boss and come back with a terrible package for James Harden, right? And so I think he thought that he could squeeze himself into the one place he wanted to go just by stomping his feet. And the Rockets are like, nah, we're not going to do that. One thing to keep in mind with Harden, he was represented by Rob Pelinka, I think, when Rob Pelinka took the Lakers job. The big thing is Harden's mom handles his affairs, if I'm not mistaken. I know he does not. I do not believe he has, like, an official quote-unquote agent. I don't know anything about his mother or anybody that's around them. I don't want to question their savvy or anything like that.
Right.
But there's a value in a professional, And so if he is trying to run his own strong arm campaign without the aid of someone who does this all the time, then this is going to be wonky.
Ask Bomani Jones the poll question before we send him off for the rest of his Friday right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, Bomani, it's the anniversary of the Lufthansa heist from Goodfellas. What's the biggest heist in sports? Gilbert Arenas, Albert Hainsworth, Mike Hampton, Bobby Bonilla.
Oh, no. Oh, why? Can I do my none of the above?
Please.
Sure.
What do you got?
Frank McCourt bought the Dodgers with no money and then sold them for $1 billion and still owns the parking lot.
That's right. He does own the parking lot.
Beating that?
We didn't think we just figured we didn't think beyond just player and contracts. I didn't think of that one, but that's why we have you on. That is a great heist.
Man got $1 billion, and the divorce is what set it all off. And you guys are out there in California. He got to keep the parking lot.
That's right.
That's right.
That's true. Everybody gets their $50 just to go set a tire on there
much money.
to take 13 hours to drive in and out too. Oh my gosh. That's a good one, Bomani. That's why we have you on. Thanks for doing this. Let's do this again real soon. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Sounds good, man. You boys have a good one.
You got it. That's Bomani Jones. Everybody check out his podcast, The Right Time with Bomani Jones, on ESPN podcast app, as well as where all apps can be acquired. The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I just love the way he looks at the world. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.